Guys, can we come to the front, please? Yes. Come to the front, please. Those at the back, come to the front. Thank you, thank you. Move to the front.
If you didn't move to the front, I would have passed the mic to Mina.
So we need more people coming, and they need to be able to assist when they come. So come to the front, to the places at the back.
Anyone know the theme that we've been on, that we just started last week? What's the theme? Foreshadowing Christ is today's talk. What was the theme, cheeky monkeys? In the Old Testament. So today we've got Mark. It's got echo because that's the mic. Next week we've got Tabernacle. Another week we've got the Feast of Israel and how they foreshadow Christ. But today we've got Mark. Over to you.
Okay, hello everyone. So we started a theme about foreshadowing of Christ in the Old Testament and how Christ was there, but for those who were looking. Last time we talked about Moses and how all the events that happened to him was all pointing at Christ in one way or another. We see this theme over and over with almost every character in the Bible, with almost everyone, where everything they go through, everything that happens, would always point at something deep. So before we start diving into Joshua, which is today's talk, I'd like to share this verse with you. That's in Ecclesiastes 7. What it says is, whatever exists is far off and most profound. Who can discover it? I wrote it in Arabic because it's a bit deeper in Arabic. It says, but the deepest of the deep, who can find it? Solomon was talking about wisdom and how if we look very closely in every single thing, every single event that happens in our life, or the people around us that just do not show up by mistake or by coincidence, if we look deep enough, we find a lot of wisdom. But let's go back to today's talk. We're going to talk about Joshua. Do we know who Joshua is? So Joshua is the second leader of Israel after Moses. To dive in deep and know who he was, his name was actually not Joshua, and we see it in Numbers 13. I'm sorry, the text will probably be too small. But anyway, Moses at the time, in number 13, he was looking into getting into Canaan, deliver the people. And he was choosing spies, 12 spies, one of each tribe. I was trying to send them everywhere. And then we find this man from the tribe of Ephraim, Hosea, son of Nun. And then later down the line, in the same chapter, we find that Moses gave Hosea, son of Nun, the name Joshua. Hosea means salvation. Joshua in Hebrew is Yeshua, which God is salvation, which is literally Jesus, the same name. And he had given it to him, not by mistake, but because in the grand scheme of Bible, of the Old and New Testament, Moses has always been a symbol of the Old Testament. We say in our praises, in the midnight praises, Moses, the head of the prophets, because he is a figure, a symbol of the whole Old Testament when we receive the promises and everything. And Yeshua, or Joshua, is a symbol for the New Testament, the deliverer, the one who delivered the people eventually to Canaan, just like Jesus did when he delivered us to Jerusalem, not the earthly Jerusalem, but to the heavenly one. And it was not a coincidence. And Jesus is actually the same name as Joshua, but in Greek. In Arabic, you say Yeshua, Jesus, and Yeshua. They're both the same. Yeshua is the Hebrew name. Yeshua is the Greek name. And in the book of Joshua starts in a very weird way. It starts with God talking. And if you read, I don't want to go through it all, I don't want to read it all. But have a look at it, it's Joshua 1. The whole chapter can be summarized in just one sentence. Do not be afraid. The promises of Moses will be delivered through you. And that's it. But God kept repeating himself over and over. I'll be with you. I'll never be with you. I'll never forsake you. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and courageous. Be strong and very courageous. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. And yes, Joshua needed it at the time, because when you look at it, Joshua has always been following Moses. For him, he was everything. And you can find it through Exodus. Moses would go to the mountain, Joshua would follow. Moses would go to the tabernacle, Joshua would follow and stay outside. So when Moses died, it was a big deal for him. It was a big hit. And now, God commanded him to lead the people. And if you think about it, that's exactly what happens to us when we start our life. When we start living it to Christ. There are always a lot of different times. So this message, even though it might seem like it's just a history, we're just writing what he said to Joshua, but it's actually for you and me. I'll be with you. I'll never leave you. I'll never forsake you. But then, just like what happened to Joshua, his very first task, the very first task, was not just hard. It was impossible. It was Jericho. A city with walls that, as they said, no one have ever seen before. Fortress. And it's not just about the wall and about how thick it was. I think when they were doing excavations and they digged it up, it was actually multi-layered and it was really thick. And at the time, they wouldn't just fortify a city with a wall. No, the wall would only be just one way of defense. But there would always be a pit before the wall where it would be sometimes filled with oil. So whenever someone tries to come close, they can light it up and then there's fire and the wall. So good luck crossing it. There are always archers on the top. So good luck coming close in the first place. So it wasn't just a problem, it was an impossible situation. And the same happened with Jesus in the cross. We had the same problem. We had death that somehow entered. And no matter how good we can try, we cannot defeat death. It's an impossible situation. And God needed to make a very, very good plan to try and overcome it. Well, not to try, but to overcome it. So go back to Jericho and go back to our Jerichos, which can be too many things. It can be an addiction, it can be a problem, it can be a divorce, it can be maybe a sin that you cannot overcome, maybe something deeper that no one knows. But everyone has his own Jericho, and not just one sometimes. And it always looks quite impossible to cross. So we could dive deep a little bit in how did Yeshua and Yeshua overcome these problems? On the very first reflex, when we face a Jericho, an impossible situation, a trouble, something that comes in and there is no way out. Logically, there is no way out. The first thing that we do is panic. And even though it's thought that, no, you shouldn't panic, actually, you should panic. Jesus himself panicked. If you want a proof, he had this hematohydrosis, a rare condition where your sweat turns into blood. Theoretically, there are multiple conditions that can cause this, multiple diseases. Never happened though. All the reported cases were triggered by extreme physical or emotional stress, such as acute fear or intense anxiety. So apparently it's okay when we face a Jericho, we should panic. We're humans. And even Jesus, in his humanity, panicked. When he knew that it's coming closer, he panicked. But the problem is not whether you should panic or not, but what do you do when you panic? You know, it said, if you want to know someone very well, you should see them whenever they get angry or whenever they panic. Because when you panic, you revert back to your basics. You revert back to your normal state. Any facade, anything that you were trying to show people, anything that you were trying to hide will surface. It will show. So the question is, what should we do when we panic? What do we do? Do we reach out for our phones? Shall we start calling mum, dad, our friend, whoever? What can help? Or what is the right thing to do? What is your basics? That is your homework to find out between you and yourself. When Jesus panicked, it says so in Luke 22. He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, talking about the disciples, knelt down and prayed. That was his response when he panicked. And Joshua, he did exactly the same. In Joshua 5, he reached the vicinity of Jericho. He heard about Jericho up until this point, but now he can see it. So it said when he saw it, when he went closer, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up, he zoned out, and he started panicking. And then afterwards, he walked away. So what do we actually do when we panic? What is the right thing to do when we panic? Jesus prayed, and whenever he had a test, he would always answer with the law, with what was written. So whenever he panics, his response, his basic, is going back to his basics was just pray. So our basics should be this. Also pray. When David fell into sin, and when David he actually made multiple mistakes, not just one, but in all of them, he would do one thing. He would always withdraw, run to Nathan, or run to God in one way or another, and speak to him. Which is why in Nehemiah, everything is literally Psalms, the prayers of David, the one that God said, he runs by my own heart. He has my own heart. So if you notice, in every hour in Nehemiah, you'll find Psalms, then a piece of the Bible, and then more prayers, that comes from Psalms. So Psalms is one thing. There are actually 3 P's that we can go back to. I've written a few Psalms. These are my favorite, but feel free to find your own. And the second P is the promises. Remembering what God said, which is going back to the first verse of Joshua. That's why it was too long, reminding him over and over that you're facing a lot of troubles to come. You have to remember, do not be afraid. Be strong and courageous. And he kept repeating it over and over and over, giving him fuel. Make this your basic. Do not be afraid. Be courageous. I did not write down promises from the Bible. It said that there is more than 1,000. And I would suggest that you find your own. When you find one in the Bible, just mark it. Remember it, because you will need it. Whether you have Jericho right now, or will you have one in the future, you will need it. And the third one is the praises. There was a king in the Old Testament called Hezekiah. He was a king, but it seemed like he had some silliness inside him. He was such a little boy when it comes to panicking, which is actually good to have. He, a king, actually 3 kings, out of nowhere, just decided to attack them. Started saying, just give up your city. We don't want to fight you, and you know very well that we're 3 or 1. We outmatch you, we outclass you in every way. So either you listen, or we take your city. And he didn't know what to do, but he did something that is very amazing. Went back straight to the altar, had the messages in his hand. He was like, they wrote this. That was basic. That's what he did. Sorry. He sent one of his prophets. Don't remember which one. I don't remember. Probably. It was Isaiah. Probably Isaiah. Yeah, Isaiah was, yeah. He sent Isaiah and he said, don't worry. By tomorrow, they will not be. And they were already surrounding the city. You can see 3 armies are camping outside. Logically, there is nothing. There is no way to go out. Logically, when you look, it's a Jericho. It's another one. It's a wall. It's a pit. You cannot cross. Then he did something even sillier. He went to the war and he said, you know what? God said so. We go in with the singers first, the ones who sing the words of David. And they went out to the war, warriors back, singers first, singing the 135th Psalm, which is the second canticle in the Midnight Praises, which was amazing. And then by the time they went to them, they were already, something happened, a very loud noise, and they were too scared. And then they started attacking each other and ran away. Whichever left just ran away. So by the time they went in, they found nothing but spoils. Hezekiah just went into war without swinging one sword and went back with enough spoils, probably for the year. That's the strength of praises. So these are the basics that we should have whenever we face Jericho. These are the basics that Jesus had. And these are the basics that Joshua had. Which is why God told them, if you want to defeat Jericho, then do what I say. You circle Jericho 7 days with the trumpets, with the horns, singing. What they were singing? The praises, the ones that Moses wrote. And you do that 7 days, and in the 7th day you do it 7 times. He's sending a clear message that should be your basic. You're going into Canaan now. You're going into the promise. You do not need your sword, but you need this, because that's how I listen. That's how I fight for you. If you want to fight for yourself, that's fine. Good luck. You might win and you might lose. By the way, they lost their next battle because they went in with a sword, not with God. If you want to go in with your sword, good luck. But if you go in with these basics, then I will be with you. The second thing is this, which might seem a bit dramatic. Beg for a favor. These specific words are written in Hosea 12:4, which going back to the Old Testament, one of my favorite characters was Jacob. Not because he was just one of the patriarchs and the fathers, but when you look at Abraham and you look at Isaac, they are far too perfect. You cannot compare yourself to them. But when you look at Jacob, the chronic liar, the deceiver, the one that likes running, troublemaker, causes trouble everywhere he goes, and he does nothing but run. Except for the one night when he was going back, running from Laban, back to his town. And then he heard that Esau is also meeting him, and he knew very well that he initially ran from Esau, and Esau holds a grudge for him, or against him, and he's ready to kill him. He didn't know what to do. He did exactly what both Joshua and Jesus did. Withdrew, left everyone. He was like, go away. And he walked near one of the rivers, I think called Yabuk, and he was so heavy of heart, so deep down in his sorrow. It's another Jericho, and there is no way out. There is no way I'm convincing Esau when he's coming in with warriors already. What am I going to say? And he said, I crossed with my stick, and now I'm crossing back to my town with 2 armies. He didn't want to watch his family die, and he completely zoned out. And when he zoned out, he saw this figure, a man, someone. And then it says in the Bible that he wrestled him from the night until dawn, which is at least 3-4 hours. And if you can't just say he wrestled him, there was always a question, which, what did they actually say? And we never knew the answer up until Hosea, when he said, when God was about to punish Jacob, he cried and begged for a favor, which is what we should also do. We should beg God for a favor. Not just a favor to let this pass or a favor to let Jericho fall, but maybe a favor to forgive what we did. Maybe it's our sin. Maybe it's our inadequacies of any way, which is the second step. Beg for a favor. And God never ever shows up as, yeah, you prayed, Jericho will fall now. He never shows up like that. His sole response, his first response is always, hi, I'm here. To Jacob, it was the same. He saw a figure, someone, and he didn't say anything. But Jacob knew very well that that was the man that my dad told me about before. And he didn't say anything up until the very end when Jacob said, I'm just not leaving you, there is no way. And he hit him in his leg, dislocated his hip, to tell him that you no longer run now, you face me. And that's what God always does. He dislocates us with a Jericho, telling us, you no longer run, you stay and you face me, I'm here. It's never to fix the problem. The problem is there to teach you something. The problem is there to tell us something or to send a message. Or maybe to teach us something, or maybe to prepare for something big. But then we can find that that's what actually they did, both of them. When Jesus said, prayed so hard, with blood coming out of his skin, and then he said, if you're willing, take it. I don't want this cup, but let your will be done. And when Joshua zoned out and went away, God showed up to him in the same way he showed up to Jacob, and he said, as he showed up as a knight with a drawn out sword. And he said nothing. And the whole dialogue just doesn't make any sense. He just said, this is the Holy Land, take off your shoes. To tell him that I am here. Go back to your basics, to the promises, and don't worry, I'm here. I'm with you. But then always comes the question of, why do they always have to be a Jericho? Why do they always have to be a cross? And when God wants to send us a blessing, some sort of a holiness, as St. Paul would say, he would always send the Jericho, which is literally what he said here in Hebrews 11. He said, my son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the ones he loves, and he chastens everyone he accepts as his sons. So apparently it's a requirement, not if it happens. Endure hardships as discipline. God is treating you as his children. So when Joshua had Jericho, as the first step, it was God sending him a message that you are my child. It's the first one, it's the most impossible. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you're not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then it's not too bad after all. But these are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have all had human fathers who disciplined us, respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the fathers of spirit and live? So if you accept it, I mean, there are some people that when you meet, you're like, yeah, your parents have had a good hand in you. You're very disciplined, very well. And if we accept this from our fathers, our earthly fathers, then why would we not submit to the Father of Spirit, to the Father of spirits, and live? They disciplined us for a little, while as they thought best. But God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. So that is the whole point of having Jericho in our life. That is the whole point of having a cross in our life, to share in his holiness. For no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful later on. However, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. There are a lot of people around us that you would see and you would be like, I feel like you're a blessing. And we don't know what they have gone through, what is happening in the background. That is what is happening in the background. These are the harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have trained by it. Which later on, St. James in James 1 says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, That is the whole point, to be mature and complete. So when we find Jerichos everywhere, we find the cross that we need to bear. We should always remember, when we revert back to our basics, we should always remember that the whole point is for us to be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So the whole point of it was to give us the gift, faith. A lot of people would go into faith thinking that, okay, it's going to get better from now on. It does in a certain way, but most of the time, it will start with Jericho, and not just one, maybe a few, maybe more. And the whole point is to give you the faith to continue. Because it's written that without faith, we cannot satisfy Him. Because He wants nothing but a complete faith to believe. There was a story in John 15 about the Canaanite woman. There was a woman, and her daughter was so sick, and she was Canaanite, so she was not a Jew. Canaanites to Jews were, they would literally call them dogs. They wouldn't respect them. And she came in all the way from her place because she heard about this man that is called Jesus, and apparently he does miracles. And she came all the way to him. When she found him, she kept calling, Jesus, help me, help me, help me. And everyone around him, including the disciples, were like, just ask her to go away. She's very obvious that she's a Canaanite. They didn't want him to do anything for the Canaanites. And he agreed. He said, woman, go away. The bread of the children should not be thrown away to the dogs. He closed the door in front of her. But he was not thinking this way. He was trying to show them, to teach them a lesson. He was digging deeper inside her. Because what she said next was, okay, even if I'm a dog, these dogs take the crumbles that fell from their master's table. She had the faith. She had the gift of faith that God is trying to brew inside every single one of us through these closed doors and these hardships. And then he asked her and told her, you get what you want. Not your daughter will be well, or the sickness has gone. No, you get what you want. I'm pretty sure if she wanted something silly, like a star to fall down, it would have happened. Because that's literally what he said, what you want, you will have. And that's the fruit. That's what we get when we're into faith. Because when we're into this kind of faith that Joshua had, you don't just, what you want will always align with what God wants. And you always hear, you get what you want, which is a gift of faith. So remember, when you face a Jericho or a cross in your life, when things get darker, and it will be at one point, remember that is panic, but go back to the basics, the promises. Remember that it's not just there because it's over or because God forget you. No, it's actually because He remembers you very well. But He decided to treat you as the child. Amen.
I finished a bit too early. We need to kill him.